Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro, where they are good people, they're still evil tools of the campuses they went to, replacing what our founders communicated. So then everyone's making examples of free speech that can't be defended without self-valuing criminally foreign influence principle treatments at each age and nature of campus. The difference of guilt there or the names next to them, which they'll confess this to you. But you have to ask them properly. They've been planting evidences with the news at the same time. With child abusers, leaders, and kids years apart, first forced. The same names further involved then and now with more leaders of kids and more elderly homes roles and programs with the elderly. They've made a whole bunch of industries and titles and jobs that can't defend themselves and afford to have discerned what nature communicated about America's founding. Before America's founders were born, there were more than 13 colonies entrenched with even slavery rules only allowed northern colonies and southern colonies. They did not have free speech. They had this declassified for themselves. People get away with pretending that's debatable because while you're self-valuing criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw uses of your campuses from off them too, no, to keep screened use /s of that too from off it. Hyper additionally at the locations there are collusions. Well, that's why I taught about American history. That way, it's the way we know all those things. You're supposed to speak about and know, understand why James Madison's plan. He's the only founder we know the name of, and he forced everyone to fight for to be a unity. He had to counter-extort people at key locations inside, again, more than 13 colonies. Again, per a method that even had slavery entrenched, which note is replacing what nature communicates with our black pupils' whites of eyes. Why and how we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time, and exceptions in exception nature that come with the same with demonstration /s of the same thing, which is also nature not just teaching us about eyes with our own eyes difference, and with showing us birds, fish have eyes distinctly from ourselves, but non-distinctly, and those are also two different species bodies. And they're also, each of those different species bodies are each one's made up of a whole bunch of individual different bodies, because nature is showing us its difference is generating all group differences, or it demonstrates when we are using systems tactical ulterior from its own. But this made self-valued roles with systems tactical ulterior from nature's system when it's also positive onto itself, and or not only itself as criminal insidiousness. Nature teaches about criminal insidiousness as any system that entertains the laws that were multi-front against every human difference and rolls with it that were entrenched since before our founders were born. You have to understand how it was sickly distinctly sustained against Native Americans. And to understand that, you have to understand how it was sickly distinctly sustained upon those countries. And why and how, more probably and demonstrably, modern religious messengers, they had to partially leave cipher to be deciphered, which is why the beginning of the Old Testament, for example, says, only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together in the part that comes before it. And that's before the part with the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It doesn't say only defend that. But know it also. If someone's going to deny, things that our founders said, they have to self-value principle treatments. They have to self-value. I lost my jaw. I tried another way. But the point is, James Madison's plan was to counter-extort key people and to force them to break the crazy laws, not just of the internationally monitored conversations that were used to measure and maintain everyone an extent of collusion /s against themselves and against everyone else syntactically, therefore physically. Otherwise, that body was sensed and it was adapted to, including if that body was a majority of people, including if it was everyone. Who denies this will also have inherent to, active to, and progressive to their logic and to their nature of logic. Demonstration / that's the same thing. Ben Shapiro has delusions, and with Americans that are replacing, look at the people in the background in rap videos with those people stacking in New York City. And then pay attention to where and how the suburbs are actually designed. They were designed for a torture, extortion, fact-cheating nature slavery method. Our founders had to declassify for themselves because they couldn't go into it honestly during their lifetime because they would have been sentenced. They declassified for us to understand how and why they did. No one had free speech, and everyone had to pretend other to an extent, again, otherwise be sentenced, including if that body was a majority of people, including if it was everyone. And it is adapted to any grouping of countries that tries to fix things or improve humanity, while there's still locations, areas, and states entertain fact, treatment, nature, quality aspects in nature. As is, in other words, they can't help but self-value collusion / S. This breaching method has criminally foreign influence uses of each age and nature of campus consciously, right through the people involved with it. I recorded the networks involved forcing child abusers, leaders, and kids years apart, more involved then and now. The thing that motivates good people to be and stay evil, everyone speaking through others. The breaching method knew they would. They would pretend to be integrity as titles anyway. Black pupil. We have black pupils, whites of eyes. They use this word reparations to measure and maintain. People will make illegal arguments and subject treatments. They can't defend that and afford to have nature itself and our founders communicate. This is a predicate acts of facts method. I'm not even a lawyer. Who wants to deny it will have inherent to, active to, progressive to their logic, their nature of logic, the same thing, / S. We have with nature communicates, with black and white, replaced. And we have tactically delusions wrought people that wouldn't be that way. If you guys would follow mandated law, get me off the fake conversations with WFSB, Connecticut's Channel 3 News. Simultaneously, their sources in interbranch, they've been switching and forging names and sequences, putting fake transcripts in the databases, also with federal agencies and foreign countries, and names at the bordering states, families with the bordering states, and families with the bordering countries that have been grouped here and there since before our founders were born. They have live progressions for their collusions / S with uses of their own differences and other people's differences. Already the certain type of victim / hyper victim that the breaching method knew wouldn't be able to speak about the law properly, they pretended they could anyway. Then they self-guided collusion / S. Increasingly, the Connecticut State Judicial Branch offices and corrections offices has collusions with the people that train them to the campuses, the people running the prisons. Sandy Hook Prison has and has had collusion / S with natures, with families involved with predicate acts and predicate act methods at and next to the campuses. Increasingly, a Rick Cianfaglione, a Ray Collo, and a Timothy O'Brien, years apart, made recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, also with students from my school, little kids and adults when I was a kid and then as an adult. They have roles with other countries like Russia and people with name Peruta, involved with them planting evidences at the corners of the streets, at the campuses I went to. These are also people acting so others can take pictures and pretend people know each other. There are proofs that there's a picture of me walking out of a door before a Kevin Harris. A Kevin Harris is involved with all kinds of identity theft, fraud, slanders with investigators involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, past, proven, and more recorded involved. And their roles with people that have roles of predicate acts on my street. I never saw Kevin Harris on my street, never saw him on the inside of a campus. They try to make it look like other by having him walk out of the door that day. And increasingly, he has roles with a Rick Cianfaglione, with a Brian Silver, and various prosecutors and judges, and people involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, planting evidences behind my back with their teachers and other students repeating fake things, with the FBI director Robert Luskin in foreign countries too, his co-defendants and their family members, and rows of corners of buildings and corners of streets for federal evidences, crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders that are relative, because that's one of the things replacing with black pupils, whites of eyes communicates by nature itself. And showing us the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. We are a different species body from other species bodies. Each one of the species bodies is each made up of a whole bunch of individual different bodies. Nature is showing us what is generating this. It is showing us its body to an extent, its body of value progression. It's not us, not the other species bodies. Quality is all things anyway. And so we can discern its body of value progression to an extent where it comes with its complete, with that comes with a variable extent we could discern it. It comes with its complete identity relationship to itself, and the value of that only increasing here or forced from here when we are using systems tactical ulterior from its own. It demonstrates with individual finite and simultaneously with grouped active and with simultaneous / hyper-simultaneous demonstration /S. That hyper-simultaneous, its identity relationship to itself only further positive is like every identity. While every identity has relativity to positive and negative simultaneously, where more and more positive also further positive onto itself is being made here or forced from here. But we have self-valid roles now that a breaching method uses remotely at countries A through Z, and or using everyone remotely sensing for the breaching method, anyone not self-valid roles. And how do you think they got away with replacing what's actually recorded about what James Madison communicated, and about what George Washington did, and about what nature does at the same time? They have roles with uses of the word reparations to sense for the breaching method that individually grouped it together, measures the suits and ties, counters and exceptions, incapable of making a subject treatment properly. Increasingly, psychiatry has medical campuses and fire campuses involved with all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes, and multiple agencies self-valid roles with that. Also, tactically delusions are up. I'm not even a doctor. They're putting fake transcripts, fake conversations about religions too. In other words, they can't afford to have what discern what actually was and is capable of being discerned. Forgiveness is because there are a whole bunch of guilt roles with the names of the people the sciences have stayed self-valued, criminal and ceaseless natures of principles treatments with syntax. You don't bring up reparations, leaving out black pupils, whites of eyes, being and have been replaced by a bunch of fake integrity voices used to screen too. Other involved, overt criminal enterprises, private ones. They have time collusions with their forced patients and criminals. Running into high line progressions at the same time, the failing members of fire departments. How this is motivated is increasingly recorded. People on up the state of Connecticut, judicial branch office and corrections offices. Oh, they're making allegations. They're pretending things are not allegations when they're supposed to pretend, when they're supposed to be referring to things as allegations. Simultaneously, they're changing things to allegations and changing and faking what the people say and said about predicate acts. Get me off the fake conversations about the World Trade Center and change conversations to WFSB has with people that they forced collusions, and they're forcing collusions with themselves, with people interstates involved with Connecticut's new networks. The same names have collusions with U/S of the differences of the guilt of voices and names at or next to them, and or at or next to the public television. As an exception, this breaching method measures and maintains all self-valid roles using exceptions and exception nature, tactical ulterior from how nature does. And then it shows them they have to hide this too. Increasingly, people associated with corners of streets, like as a Perron family, And there's a Kerr family also involved with a pseudo corner where they just put not too long ago Morgan Circle street sign up. Increasingly, that spot has a Joe DeMoro, a Ray Collo, and a Mike Kerr all along Route 3 in conjunctions to it like Morgan Circle, involved with Wethersfield Police and with multiple police departments and New Britain Superior Court and other courts, increasingly involved with proven years apart first force child abusers, leaders, and kids. Whole bunch of foreign and domestic military with the families at next to a religious spot on Route 3, on all sides of it too. Further involved with untimely deaths, and one at Trinity College, even if it was made up. FBI Director Robert Luskin is also involved with these names intercities and interstates and internationally, but also there's a hyper international involved. We're going to examine this. But you guys have to follow mandated law. Get me off the fake conversations about the World Trade Center attack with WFSB, and they changed the fake what others said too, as ones that were interstates involved. I was in the morning of September 11th, the morning of the World Trade Center attack, right before it happened. I was in the Ninth Circuit Court right next to it as an observer. Increasingly, before and after the attack, people had asked me for help. Per the FBI, I didn't know he was involved with it yet. I knew other ways, but in other words, when I think about it, but in other words, and I didn't know his name. FBI Director Robert Luskin and various courts and their family members in intimate ties with Harvard Courts, New Britain Superior Court, and Connecticut's District Court. They had collusions at West Hartford locations and at the town lines with people with retired police chiefs from Wethersfield and people on off the state corrections and judicial branch offices. Also with some black KKK, Confederate flag team, Latino team, Italian team, Irish team, military, and people involved with identity theft, fraud, slander. See, one of the things that nature shows us is a breaching method had and has roles with an identity theft, fraud, slander method, and all self-value roles or roles sensing for the breaching method, anybody not self-value roles. They're using Ben Shapiro as a tactically pseudo-educated, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw adult who's only capable of pretending other. And this would change. These are people, Joe Rogan too. Even though Joe Rogan fell for the, someone told him that a regular pig turns into, I forgot what's the name of that? A boar with the hair and all that. Joe Rogan's a good person, but campuses A through Z were sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. That's relative to where and to how. And to why. Sickly distinctly, the North and South, colonies, and then states still had that breaching method entrenched. Even roles with black changing with nature communicates, with black and white, and with difference. Slash S, we have the same chlorides, different chlorides at the same time. We have different species bodies than other species bodies. Each species body is made up of a whole bunch of different species bodies. And we didn't generate that, and it's not generating that. All exceptions, exception nature, no. They come with demonstration slash S of the same thing. How it uses exception and exception nature. The ways we do and can. But we could ignore its system. And the breaching method only allowed self-value roles, ignoring its system. It also, when did it stop using nature's demonstrations of that? And everyone pretended they could speak for integrity anyway. Suits, ties, counters, exception. Black people, period. Who disbelieves? Now, they need to pretend others. So the breaching method showed the identities of the law to pretend to be against racism. Fake punks. Get them on paper, one name and sequence. I'll heal their souls.